Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the case of Isabella Guzman. Once more, this was a suggested case by Banu, so thank you so much for that. I appreciate all of your suggestions. I'd just like to let you know, I mean no disrespect whatsoever to anyone I'm going to talk about today. I've just gathered this information off the internet and compiled it into one video for educational purposes. So, many of you may know that Isabella Guzman has recently been going viral on things like Tik Tok, but the case that's actually behind it is 7 years old and actually happened in 2013. The thing that caught everyone's attention was this pretty little 19-year-old girl who was walking into a trial wearing this orange jumpsuit, her hands chained up, and it was just one of them things that people really didn't expect somebody like Isabella to be the one on trial, but the crime she committed was brutal and disturbing, and just the way she acted in trial, she was smiling, she was pulling faces at the camera. She seemed completely without remorse for what she did to her own mother. As I said, it's going around the internet like TikTok, and somebody's actually coupled these images of her in this orange jumpsuit with the song Sweet But Psycho, and it just went viral. But what is the actual story behind it all? Well, Isabella was born in June 1995 to her mother, Yun Mi Hoi, and her father, Robert Guzman. Isabella had kind of a normal childhood living with her parents. That wasn't until their marriage started to unravel. The pair did go on to get a divorce later in life, and Yun Mi found another partner, and this man was Ryan Hoi. And she did end up marrying Ryan, and he was like a second father to Isabella. He became her stepfather. They had this quite a decent relationship together, and he was a good stepfather to her. They all lived together in Aurora, Colorado in the USA. However, they didn't all live together in peace because the relationship between Isabella and her mother really started to disintegrate and deteriorate after she actually split with her father. She began giving her mother so much grief, they were having a lot of problems, and they would fight and argue quite often. I found out that she would be really rebellious and she would misbehave all the time, and her mum would try and discipline her, but it never really made any difference. Her mother even sent her at the age of 7 to go and live with her father for a while because her behaviour just becomes so difficult for her mother to deal with. She did eventually move back in with her mother, but their relationship just kept getting worse and worse. Isabella did drop out of Overland High School. So Young Me actually owned a studio. It was called Bella's Portrait Studio, and it was in the town centre of Aurora. And she would often work these really long hours, sometimes 12-hour shifts. And Isabella would also go and help. She would go and work with her mother on occasions. Young Me was described as a really hard-working woman. And she tried so hard for her family. She tried so hard to keep it together. And she loved her family. But it was said that Isabella never really appreciated what her mother did for her. On the 27th of August in 2013, Isabella and her mother had this huge argument. And according to Ryan, Isabella actually spat in her mother's face in the middle of this argument, and then she actually sent her a threatening email which said, "You will pay." Now, Isabella was acting so aggressively and so threateningly towards her mother, and like I said, they didn't really have a good relationship anyway, but she was so afraid that night that the following day she did actually call the police on her. On the 28th of August in 2013, Isabella actually got a visit from her father, Robert. Yun Mi had actually called him, saying that Isabella had threatened her, she was getting out of control, and asked if he could obviously come down and have a chat with his daughter. He discussed her threatening behaviour and just her behaviour in general. He had basically come over to let her know that she should respect her parents. They both went and sat in the backyard, and they chatted about how she should do what her parents asked of her, and that she shouldn't be rebellious, she needs to respect her parents, and that she should really listen to her mother. And he did actually think that he was getting through to her, and that she actually might listen to him. Isabella went on to spend the rest of the day in her room. Later on, the police arrived at the house. As I said before, she called the police because she was worried about this threatening behaviour, and she was worried for her safety because of this. The Aurora police attended the house, but they didn't witness any violence. So obviously she'd not hit her mother or anything like that. It was just this threatening behaviour. So they went and had a chat with her. They basically told her that her mother had every right to kick her out for the behaviour that she was exerting. And obviously that she needed to stop because of this. She might end up getting kicked out of the house. And it seemed to really calm Isabella down. The police thought the work were done, and so they left the house. Little did anybody know what Isabella would do next. 3 hours later, at around 9:30 p.m, everyone thought that everything had calmed down. Yeonmi came home from work, she went upstairs to have a shower, and Ryan was downstairs eating food when he heard this loud thumping noises coming from above his head, which was the bathroom, which was obviously where Yeonmi was actually going to take a shower. He then heard her shouting his name. So he went running upstairs and he tried the door. Now he managed to push the door open slightly. He caught a glimpse of Isabella in there. He heard the shower running and Isabella simply pushed her back up against the door and then she locked it. She didn't let him in. He panicked, rightly so. Isabella had been acting threatening to her mother recently and she'd been so disrespectful that her mother literally feared for her safety. As he was trying to get in the door, he began to saw a pool of blood slowly creeping out from under the door. And so he ran downstairs to get his mobile to call the police. As he was on the phone to him, he was coming back upstairs, and that is when he heard his wife say the word Jehovah before the door swung open, revealing Isabella stood in the doorway, covered in blood, holding a knife. She was dressed in a pink sports bra and these turquoise shorts, holding this bloodied knife in her hand. She didn't say a word to Ryan. She didn't even look at him. She literally walked from that bathroom straight ahead as if he wasn't even there. Completely void of any motion, she walked straight out the front door.
The female is going to be armed with a knife. She's an 18-year-old female. It says mixed race. I think it might be with Asian. She's wearing a pink tank top, shorts, one shoe.
And she basically left her mother behind, bleeding to death, and her stepfather there to deal with it. So the moment she left, he could see his wife on the floor in a pool of blood. She was lying next to this baseball bat and she was bleeding out. The 911 dispatcher gave him instructions on how to perform CPR, which he did. It was only when he was clearing her airway, so pushing like a chin backwards, when he told the dispatchers that he believes that she had actually died already, because she had this blank stare straight ahead and it was this fixed gaze, and he just realised that she'd passed away. When the police arrived, they found Yeonmi lied naked in the bathroom, covered in blood. She had her throat slit and she was lying next to this baseball bat. She was pronounced at the scene at the age of only 47. She had been stabbed to death by her own daughter, who was 18 at the time. Robert Guzman was informed a little later on when the police came around to his home, and he was absolutely heartbroken. The authorities took Yeonmi's body for an autopsy, and it was found that she had suffered 31 stab wounds to her face, 48 stab wounds to her neck, and a further 79 stab wounds to her torso. In total, she had 151 stab wounds, and she had also been beaten with that baseball bat that was next to her. This case is just so gruesome and so tragic that her daughter actually murdered her mother by stabbing her 151 times. Isabella walked straight into a public restroom of a H-Mart covered in blood, where she went and changed her clothes and she cleaned herself up. Now there would have been a lot of people that saw her come in, so she had to think of something. Basically, she came out kind of crying. She said that she'd just been raped. She begged them not to call the police. She said that she didn't want to go home to face her stepfather. The police went on a 16-hour manhunt for Isabella before they finally found her the next day in a parking lot that was very close to her home. They had actually received a call at 11:30 by a member of the public stating that there was a body in the car. Now when they got there, the body had gone. Obviously this person was no longer in the car, but they found items of which they believed were involved in Yeonmi's crime. And so they brought in undercover officers, and they even brought in dogs. An undercover officer actually followed a woman out of one of the garages, And as she left, another 2 officers followed. The woman that they were following was in fact Isabella, and the 3 of them did pull the guns on her, and Isabella just sat down next to a bush and gave herself up. County Judge Stephen F. Collins ordered that she would actually remain in jail without bond on suspicion of first-degree murder. She had actually turned 18 in June, which meant she would be tried as an adult and was liable for the death penalty. The detectives didn't disclose any motive as to why Isabella had done this. They couldn't find one. They said that there was no clues as to her reasons. Ryan told them that she'd always been a challenge as a young child, and that obviously a relationship with her mother was really not a good one. But I doubt that anyone ever thought she was capable of doing something like this. Stabbing her own mother 151 times is just unimaginable. Her aunt, Melanie Guzman, described Isabella as like this typical teenager. She'd gone to visit a few months prior to the murder. And yes, she could get angry, but she said that violence was out of character for her, and that her mother actually spoiled her. She said that she was always really sweet, and she could see her doing the typical teenager thing where you get angry, you shout and argue, and then you storm off to your room and like lock yourself in. But that she wouldn't be violent like that. It just wasn't in Isabella's nature, according to her. Her family were obviously stunned and heartbroken as to what had happened. Her father Robert stated that Isabella was a good kid, that's good-hearted, and he couldn't understand how this could have happened. And this takes us full circle back around to the trial of this seemingly sweet young girl that just shocked everyone. During her trial, her defence entered the insanity plea. They stated that she suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. Now, the symptoms of this mental illness, for those who do not know, is schizophrenia along with things like hallucinations, talking to somebody that isn't there, talking to yourself, and delusions. These symptoms are debilitating and are said to blur the line between what is real and what isn't, making it really difficult for a person with this illness to be able to lead a typical life. The judge did accept this plea after a psychological evaluation. So looking in this case was really quite sad. You'd never imagine that something like that could happen, that a young mother's life was taken away by her own daughter. And it's just so horrible what happened that day. Seemingly, at a trial, she was without remorse after stabbing her own mother 150 times and hitting her with a baseball bat. She was smiling at the camera, she was pulling these faces. But obviously, if she was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, that could be the explanation as to why. Blurring the lines between what is real and what isn't. And that's just really sad, because if she did this not knowing what was real and what wasn't, and she killed her mother over it, oh, it's just awful. My heart truly goes out to the family for the loss of Yeonmi, and I do truly hope that Isabella can continue her treatment, and maybe one day she'll get to a point in life where she is able to lead a typical life. But for now, Isabella is currently 25-year-old, and she has been receiving treatment for her illness at Pueblo Psychiatric Hospital in Colorado. If you guys have any more suggestions you'd like me to look into, please do let me know and I'll look into them for you. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Anyway, that's all I have today, guys, on the case of Isabella Guzman. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!